Okay, good evening, everyone. Can I get a motion to return to open session, please?
Motion to return to open session.
Second.
Roll call vote. Roll call.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Carla?
Aye.
Joel?
Here.
Lizzie?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're now back into open session of the Woodland Community Consolidated School District Board meeting for July 23rd, 2020. Roll call.
Carla?
Here.
Joe?
Here.
Lizzie?
Here.
Jennifer?
Here.
Renee?
Here.
David?
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay, thanks. Next up, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have guests for a Pledge of Allegiance?
We do not. So if you could lead us in that, Dr. Little.
And do we have a flag?
We do.
Okay, great. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it
stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next up we have approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote.
Joe?
Yes.
Lizzie?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Carla?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. And then next up is Superintendent Showcase. I'll turn it over to Dr. Lori Casey for her showcase.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure this evening to acknowledge some staff members who have gone above and beyond during the COVID-19 pandemic and assisted in our planning and our remote learning for spring and our contingency plans for the fall. I'd like to thank Fran Elanius. She took time out every day, even though she had a full workload, to supervise our grab and go lunch service and our breakfast service and to make sure our counts were accurate and to make sure everything ran smoothly. So a big thank you to her. She's definitely someone that works behind the scenes that it doesn't go as noticed as it should. So she made a huge impact for really thousands of breakfast and lunch meals. I'd also like to thank Tracy Fitzgerald. During the pandemic, Tracy collaborated closely with her third grade team members to teach herself Google Classroom, as well as to develop lessons that students could access in a way that allowed for independence as well as personal connections. She worked tirelessly over spring break to make sure students and families would be prepared for lesson delivery during the crisis. She worked outside the box to make sure that her third grade scholars would have learning experiences that would be memorable as well as connected. Parents and caregivers regularly commented to administration how impressed they were with the organization and responsiveness during this unprecedented time. Thank you, Tracy. Next, we have Elizabeth Howard. Liz set up Google Meets during her plan time to meet with her resource students to offer support during remote learning. She assisted her team members with learning different platforms, and she also made personal connections with her students by sending in videos of herself and her own children saying the pledge. Thank you. Angela Walker is our technology integration specialist, and she's a person that should be recognized. She worked tirelessly over breaks and on weekends to try and support our teachers in order for them to support our students. So thank you to Angela. And finally, we have Denise Hunt. Denise is one of our amazing custodians at Elementary West. Although she did not directly have interaction with our students during remote learning, she should be recognized for her amazing efforts during the pandemic. Denise supported our staff by helping gather teaching supplies, passing out materials and food to students, and being readily available during the school closure. Denise was always a friendly and welcoming face to our staff as they returned to pack up their classrooms and did all that she could to make sure that they had the tools necessary to do it in a safe manner. Her positivity and her commitment to Woodland during the crisis is a great reminder that when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Thank you, Denise. That's what I have for today.
Thank you, Lori. Any discussion, questions?
I believe there's somebody else that needs recognition that wasn't included on Dr. Casey's list that's very, very deserving of recognition, and that's Dr. Casey herself. Talk about a year to take over as superintendent.
Thank you, Chris.
To say things have been hectic since March is an understatement. And all the changes that the pandemic has brought, you know, the long hours that you've worked, the sleepless nights, you've been leading Woodland with strength and with grace. And I'll tell you what, in the short period of time since you've gone through the transition, your performance, your leadership, it just confirms that the board made the right decision when choosing Dr. Vogt as successor. So we thank you. I don't know how, but you've managed to keep us focused and you've managed to keep us organized amidst a truly chaotic time. So thank you, Dr. Casey.
Wow. Well, thank you, Chris. I was not expecting that, but thank you very much.
Great job. To Lori and all the staff and all the hard work that you guys put in, long hours, we definitely appreciate it. Joe, did you want to say something?
Just thank you for your thoughtful guidance through this process too. I mean, not only have you done an amazing job with the faculty and staff and with everything that you've been working on, but also you've done a great job with the board and helping keep us informed and showing really thoughtful leadership throughout this time. It's been extraordinary. I can't imagine a more eventful first few months for you, and I just really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you so much.
Any further discussion from the board? Okay, we'll move forward then with citizen statements. Board Recording Secretary Laura Campanella will read citizen statements. Do we have anyone?
We have 2 citizen statements for tonight.
And how does that work with Zoom? You're going to explain that to us, I'm sure.
So what I'm doing is the citizens have the opportunity to email what they would like to have heard through the district email, which is citizen@dist50.net. That comes over, I monitor it, and then what I'm going to do is go ahead and read the statements from the community members who did send them in, and then we will go ahead and note in the minutes that statements were read or statements were sent and read for the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So the first one is from Monica Rennick. She says, hello, I am interested in what will be done with incoming dual language kindergartners to ensure that they get a good education while learning a new language. We have tried some online Spanish classes to get ready for kindergarten. It was very difficult and my son was very confused, not learning anything in Spanish. This model just doesn't work well for little kids. I'm concerned he will not learn what is needed to get him on the right path for first grade, both learning a new language and learning basics in English like reading, writing, and math. Will there still be a good mix of native and ESL learners? Can you give dual language families the option to go full mono this year for kindergarten, but then go back to dual language program for first grade? Also, we will be able to communicate with families in the same room/same teacher prior to starting school. A lot of families are starting to make accommodations for the at-home days with a tutor to help facilitate e-learning. It would be helpful to find families in the same class so the kids are working on the same material and also know each other from school days, assuming a blended schedule. Thank you, Monica Rennick. And the second one that just came in is from Thomas Brightsman. Thomas says, good evening. First and foremost, thank you to so very many people in the Woodland family for the hard work, diligence, tenacity, and care that so many have shown in this crazy situation. The response and caring shown in District 50 is simply amazing. I think I have a small grasp of how much planning, decision-making, and just plain hard work has and is going into choices that will do the best thing possible for learning, but will prioritize keeping all people safe. For our multi-generational family, the right choice is to stay home this fall. Give it some more time to see what is going to happen. So our 5th grade dual language student will be at home regardless of options. Things are changing so quickly right now. From our perspective, you can catch up on reading and math, but you can't get someone you have lost back. Thanks for the time. Everyone stay well. Margaret Brightsman.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Renee.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Carla,
Aye.
Joe.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, we have action items. The first action item A, approval of the FY21 administrator / non-union compensation and administrative contracts. You have the information in your board packet. Can I get a motion to approve the administrative contracts and administrator / non-union salary increases as presented at an expected average increase of 2.69%?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
David. David,
Unmute David.
Yes.
thank you. Carla,
Aye.
Joe,
Yes.
Lizzie.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Action item B is approval of resolution for intervention and proceeding before the Property Tax Appeal Board. So can I get a motion to approve the attached resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing Intervention and Proceeding Before the Property Tax Appeal Board for tax year 2019?
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote.
Renee,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Carla,
Aye.
Joe,
Yes.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Action item C, approval of Dreambox online mathematic application for kindergarten through 5th grade. Can I get a motion to approve the purchase of Dreambox at a cost of $30,000 for support, to support kindergarten through 5th grade students' math progression?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Do you want to add anything here, Dr. Casey?
No, I believe the Teaching and Learning Department provided you with a report in your board packet. So if you have any questions, we could, certainly look into that, but I have nothing further.
Questions, anyone? Discussion? Roll call vote.
David,
Yes.
Carla,
I'm sorry.
Carla,
Aye.
Joe,
Yes.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Renee.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you again. Next up, we have reports and discussion items. The written report and presentation tonight is on the 2020-2021 return to school plan. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Casey for the presentation, and then we'll follow on it with the discussion.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Little. At this time, we'll also have some of our administrative team members are going to be joining because they're also doing part of our presentation this evening. Good evening again, board members. And as we're doing this presentation, certainly feel free to interrupt if you have questions, and we'll have questions at the end. As I stated before, we've had 3 committees working since April on various scenarios for our return to school plan. We've had our social distancing committee, our facilities committee, our social, emotional, and physical health committee, as well as our teaching and learning committee. We've had over 100 staff members, including administrators, teachers, nurses, social workers, psychologists, and community partners working together with us. These committees have examined research, multiple scenarios, as well as guidance from professional agencies. Hang on one second, my computer just went funny. Sorry. Sorry, 1 second. Not sure what happened. I can't see the screen. Okay, I'm good. Thanks. Sorry about that. Not a good time for that to happen. I want to extend my great appreciation for all the work that those committee members have done. It was not easy. Each of these committees has been working on different scenarios for a full remote, for hybrid, or for a full return. Next, throughout this process, we did our best to gather stakeholder feedback. We sent out surveys, we had a virtual town hall meeting, and we continually met with our union leadership. One common thread occurred: circumstances kept changing. For example, we sent out a staff survey in May, and many staff told us in June they felt that was too early and their answers may change before school starts. Today, we received a 103-page guidance document from the Illinois State Board of Education that our team will be reading over the weekend regarding return to learn in the fall. The same held true for our parent survey. Many responses were undecided at the time that we gave the survey. The original survey indicated that 20% of our parents were not at all comfortable with returning to school for in-person learning. That prompted a follow-up survey to better understand if these families would consider opting into full remote learning in the fall. Since then, outside factors beyond our control have ultimately steered tonight's recommendation. But our task was to take everything that we knew, keep getting feedback, and as circumstances changed, devise a plan to present to you tonight. Tonight, there's a change in direction. Last week, I gave you a board report, and I sent out a message to families that we were examining the best way to reopen our schools. That has not changed. I shared some of the options that our committees have been working on. And one thing we learned early on in our response to COVID-19 is that it's a very fluid and rapidly changing situation. Yet, as we worked on solidifying final pieces of the plan, I realized that we were simply not ready to say the plan was safe for everyone at this time. As we worked through all of our scenarios, and the administrative team is beyond amazing, day and night, trying to figure out what's best, we kept saying, this is how we will open, but we know most likely we're going to return to remote quickly due to having a case of COVID-19. When Lake County high schools closed, many of them, I thought, how can a family say it's safe for my second grader to go to school, but it's not safe for my sophomore? Finally, we know that schools provide students with important social interactions and experiences during a normal school day. However, given the extensive health and safety guidelines that we'll have to follow, there is nothing normal about the daily experiences our students will bring back with them. There's no lunch, there's no recess, There's no time with friends. There's no small group work in your classroom. For these reasons and more, I've decided to propose that we return to school in August utilizing remote learning. As I stated, the deciding factors we've been examining of how to return to school with student health being our #1 priority. For our team, it has become our duty to become experts on educating during COVID-19 as much as possible. We've been listening and we've been learning and we've been leading, as all school districts have been doing, in a pandemic. ISB's guidance was built for the state of Illinois in a one-size-fits-all, but do what's best for your district. And we're keenly aware that our district is unique in size for elementary students. We operate in capacities that mimic high schools. One of our biggest factors in determining our recommendation is to make sure that we do what's best for Woodland students, staff, and our community. In making my recommendation, we've done what's best in order to include stakeholder feedback of parents and staff. I'd like to explain and have my team explain with me a little more about what Woodland Remote Learning 2.0 will look like. Once we changed our direction, we wanted to ensure that we looked through an equity lens to ensure that all students had access to the same opportunities. We are looking at doing things such as assigning mentors, making sure that all students have devices and access to hotspots, and conducting home visits. We have a list of students and families who needed support from last spring who were not able to engage in remote learning for one reason or another. We're going to begin working with those families. We'll be doing a better job of engaging with all students. We're putting plans in place to support them. And we spoke to parents and we spoke to teachers, and we found out some reasons why students weren't engaged, and some of them are very simple to fix, such as a language barrier. We can do better than that. We'll also be examining our food service and how we can assist families. Each student, every student, deserves our greatest effort to help them succeed. Our students will begin in remote learning, and they're going to continue for the first quarter, which is till October 30th. We're going to be monitoring conditions and making a determination at that time concerning what learning will look like moving forward. And of course, we'll do our best to give our families and our community ample time to plan. Students will have remote learning 5 days a week, and the normal calendar will remain in place, except for some exceptions that I'm going to explain later on. In the spring, we had catch-up days, and we will not be having those days in the fall. So 1st through 8th grade will have a remote learning schedule of 9 till 3:25, Monday through Friday, and teaching staff will have hours of 8 to 3:30. We are purposely calling this plan Woodland Remote Learning 2.0 for a reason. It will look different than it did in the spring, when we were forced into remote learning in a matter of days. We will have consistent live instruction, and the curriculum will be completely aligned to the Illinois Learning Standards. We are committed to focusing on best practice and rigor. One of our committees was focused on how to support our students' social emotional needs through a remote learning environment. We believe that taking care of the social emotional growth of our students is always important, but today it's more important than ever. We will be creating virtual opportunities to build positive personal relationships in a community of learners. Students will have a daily schedule, just like in a physical school, with specials and explore classes. Also in Remote Learning 2.0, we've raised the bar of expectations for students and staff. We know that our amazing staff will rise to the challenge to make our Remote Learning 2.0 the best learning opportunity we can for students. We are expecting them to provide instruction daily to meet the needs of the students, which may be a whole group or a small group at their learning levels. One way we can do this is we're going to give our teachers the choice of teaching in their classrooms or teaching at home. So for example, a music teacher may prefer to teach in their classroom where they have all of their instruments in order to show those and share those with their students. We know that in order for our students to be successful, we need parents and caregivers to be our partners. So teachers will be communicating with them often. We are asking our parents to try and create a learning space for their children, which is a quiet place away from distractions. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Steve Thomas, the Associate Superintendent of Teaching and Learning with Equity, who will discuss some more information about our Remote Learning Program 2.0.
Thank you, Dr. Casey. We heard from parents, caretakers, and teachers about the need for systems to ensure student engagement. One essential element of engagement is clear and consistent communication about a student's absence or attendance. Woodland will return to regular attendance practices. Attendance being taken for each class at the middle school and at regular intervals at the primary, elementary, and intermediate schools. If a child is not able to attend or participate in any portion of the school day, parents or caretakers should contact the child's school homeroom teacher as well as the school office to report the absence and the reason for the absence, just like we've traditionally done when kids are in school. If you don't receive a notification from the family, the Woodland School office staff will contact the parent or caretaker of the student, even if the child only missed a small portion of the day. While we will be in remote learning 2.0, grading will return to traditional practices as if we were in the classroom. Assignments, classwork, assessments, and projects all contributing to the way we determine and communicate students' progress to our families. Feedback on demonstrations of learning will focus on students' understanding and growth. We will remain, as before, is the piece about opportunities for students to show further understanding of a topic or standard. Students will work with their teacher on what's best with them to really continue their growth. Report cards with Woodland's traditional grade markings will be accessible at the end of the first quarter for all 1st through 8th grade students. Parents communicated their experiences through the family survey last month. Fellow administrators like myself spoke to many individual families. We also heard from teachers, especially those that were part of the reentry committees. Together, they expressed very similar concerns about the previous remote learning. The common themes were there was not enough live instruction delivered. The educational term for this is synchronous instruction. Our systems need supports to foster student independence in the home environment. And we need to reduce inconsistencies with how students interact with teachers in a remote learning environment. We work to address these needs. Woodland will use 2 learning management systems for our students in kindergarten through 8th grade. Students in kindergarten through 3rd grade will use Seesaw as the primary assignment and communication tool. Schoology will continue to be used for our 4th through 8th grade students. Parents will have access to portions of Seesaw in Schoology to support, communicate, and gain insight into student learning. We will help families navigate these systems through online videos in both English and Spanish coming next month. These learning management systems will also allow our school leaders to interact in live classrooms and better monitor the needs of staff and students in remote learning 2.0. Google Meets will remain the main tool for our synchronous instruction. We're establishing live instructional minutes by grade level, and we'll continue to support the staff through training on these products throughout the summer and the days leading up to the first day of school. So every early childhood, wheel, kindergarten student, all the way up through 8th grade student will be assigned one of 2 devices. 1st through 8th grade students will be assigned a Chromebook. And all early childhood, wheel, and kindergarten students will be assigned an iPad. Classroom teachers will work to provide this initial support for students with these devices, but we will also provide other on-demand videos in English and Spanish so that families can orient themselves to the devices and the core learning tools we use at Woodland. If a parent or caretaker's home does not have reliable Wi-Fi, which is going to be needed for increased live instruction and video lessons, then we'll ask them to contact their child's school office. We will work with them on solutions to make sure that their home learning place will be productive for the child. This may include access through a low-cost Wi-Fi provider, or could mean us providing a Woodland hotspot for them. Physical materials. We all know that only being online daily for several hours is not the best effective learning environment. We will continue to use print-based materials and manipulatives to enhance student learning. We will use a delivery and pickup system that we did use very well in the spring to help provide physical materials as needed. Within the first several days, schools will be arranging times to get technology and physical materials to Woodland children. Parents and caretakers should look for their school communications about details, how they're relevant to their child. There will be no change in our supporting or special programs we offer students. Our dual language and ESL services will continue as normal. The supports we provide through our IEPs and 504 plans, again, will continue to support students. Advanced and challenge classes will also, as well as specials and explore classes, will continue only with greater synchronous instruction. These programs will all continue and be accessible to students through the same Seesaw or Schoology platform login that the students will use. If, however, families are having difficulty with the digital interface for instruction, they should contact their child's school principal so we can develop a plan to help the child be successful in Remote Learning 2.0. I would now like to introduce Mr. Chris Bobek, the Associate Superintendent of Business Services.
Good evening. Meal service for the upcoming school year will begin in a similar fashion as the service provided at the end of last year and over the summer, but with a couple of caveats. We're still offering the drive-through grab-and-go style service at the middle school where a combined breakfast and lunch pickup will be available. However, the USDA waiver allowing us to serve free meals to all children under the ages of 18 has expired and has not been reintroduced as of yet. As part of the National School Lunch Program, meal service will revert back to the traditional process requiring the district to track meals and tie them to students. So the district will be mailing barcodes or student IDs before the start of school that will need to be used during the drive-up meal service pickup. In addition to the meal pickup at the middle school, we're investigating a meal delivery service option. We're still working out the logistics, but are looking to have something up and running shortly after the school year begins. We'll be sure to send meal service program updates to our families with our regular district communications as our plan unfolds so we can keep everybody updated on our progress. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Lene Walls, the Assistant Superintendent of Special Education, to speak about the social emotional component.
Good evening. My name is Lene Walls, and I'm excited to be part of the Woodland family. Thank you for inviting me to join this exceptionally hardworking team, and I look forward to meeting each of you soon. Co-leading this work with Dr. Donna Vandenbroek, the Social Emotional Learning and Physical Health Committee grounded its mission in the student well-being goals of the district strategic plan, goals numbers 3 and 4. Knowing that COVID has touched many homes and lives on a deep and personal level, the committee investigated ways to create opportunities to build personal relationships between staff, students, and peers, and reviewed current and potential systems that address academic, behavior, and well-being needs of students. In order to accomplish these goals for students, we also considered the needs of families and staff. We will continue to implement the second step SEL curriculum, which is a research-based, teacher-informed curriculum that promotes the social emotional development, safety, and well-being of children from early childhood through grade 8. We will also continue with implementation of PBIS and restorative practices. Now more than ever, it is extremely important to foster connections through community building. We will continue to partner with community services like Warren Township to provide additional supports for students and families. As mentioned throughout this presentation, we will communicate with you, our families, our community on an ongoing basis to ensure our constituents have the most up-to-date information on our plans, as well as on our availability of services and supports. The committee created a catalog of resources for students, family, and staff. Realizing that the well-being of our staff is critical, our mental health professionals will also offer confidential staff wellness checks for colleagues. Staff connection, empathy, and support is tantamount to serving students and families well. The ISBE stresses the importance of maintaining the integrity and continuity of services for students with disabilities. We will work closely with our student support teams and staff on the provision of services and delivery models for services. Children whose screenings indicate delays in development and other students with at-risk indicators but who do not currently have service plans are also high priority for our teams. All meetings will continue to be held via conference call or virtually, and all required team members, especially parents, will actively and meaningfully participate. All screenings and evaluations will continue to be conducted in a timely and comprehensive manner. Now, I would like Mrs. Anderson to share some of the unique happenings at our primary school.
Good evening. As the principal of Woodland Primary School, I wanted to share how our programs for early childhood, wheel, and kindergarten will fit within the remote learning model. It will look different from our grades 1st through 8th grade. The primary school welcomes the largest percentage each year of new families, and we're also unique because for many families and students, this is their first experience starting school. So I wanted to go over how it will look. All Woodland Primary students will be assigned a classroom teacher and attend either an AM or PM session for remote learning. It will look very similar to our on-site AM/PM model, as students will have live instruction during their assigned session and make connections with their classmates and teacher virtually. Now, how AM and PM will be determined is based on each family's address. We use the following guidelines from our transportation department. Any family that lives north of Washington would attend our AM session, and families that live south of Washington would attend our PM session. The session times for AM would start at 9 o'clock a.m. and run until 11:30 a.m. The PM session would then run from 12:45 p.m. to 3:15 p.m. Assigning students by address is important because if we were to return to an on-site model, students would continue with the same schedule that they held during the remote learning session, and we would still be able to provide transportation for our students. Providing AM and PM sessions is the most developmentally appropriate decision for our students ages 3 through 6. We decided that we needed to maximize our time with our students and provide movement opportunities, breaks, and activities that would ensure that students that are so young are engaged and participating. Our dual language model will also participate in remote learning with half-day sessions. They will receive instruction in English and in Spanish by attending their English section for 2 days per week and their Spanish section for 2 days per week. They will alternate language days between Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays will be reserved for bridging and activities that support both English and Spanish coming together. So it very much mirrors what we would typically do on site. Now, I am confident that our amazing staff and teachers can provide a high quality and meaningful remote learning experience for our youngest Wildcats. Dr. Maychek, our new Associate Superintendent of Education, is now going to share some of the things we are doing to assist our staff and families with childcare.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Good evening, everyone. We know that with remote learning, we have many families that are essential workers or just really need to go to work every day. We've been meeting with the Gurney Park District and the Champions After School Program personnel, and they have agreed to amend and or create programming to meet the child care needs of all of our district parents. We are also contacting all other area child care agencies in our district boundaries to see how they can assist our families in District 50. We don't have specifics to share tonight, but the partners that I've spoken with already are very much open to a variety of full and half-day options for our families. We understand also that district staff with children, whether they are also district residents or not, are facing these same challenges as well. And we want to work with them to be as flexible and supportive as we can. We are examining what we can do to assist all of our families, including reaching out to the business community to gauge interest in starting a scholarship program to offer reduced cost programming to families if possible. And we will keep our families and the community updated with resources as they become available. And now I'd like to introduce Ms. Brooke Hagstrom, our district's communication manager.
Good evening. Thank you, Bob. As Dr. Maychek just said, my name is Brooke Hagstrom, and I'm the communications manager for Woodland District 50. And communication has been a critical need throughout our entire response to COVID-19, and it's going to be a really important component moving forward too. As we covered in tonight's presentation, This has been a very fluid and ever-changing situation, and that makes communicating pretty difficult with our staff, our families, our community. The information changes so quickly, and we need to get that information out. And that's difficult to do, but with the connections we've built over the past few months, and this board and this district administration are, continue to be committed to communication. So I think we can absolutely keep this momentum going. Like I said, we're committed to regular communication, and we can send out as much information as we want, but our audience needs to know where to find that information and how to connect with it. So it's really important that our families and our district staff and everyone continues to check their email regularly. Email remains one of our primary tools for communicating these regular updates. And then when it's something that rises to a more urgent message, that's when we use our robocall system. And the main reason is during the spring, especially, we were sending out communication every day, and we knew that our families wouldn't want constant phone calls. So we save robocalls for the most urgent situations. And it's really important that our families, if they see that they've missed a call from the school, to go ahead and listen to the full message. A lot of times people will pick up the phone, see they missed a call from the school, and just call back automatically. And then there's not someone on the other end of the line to answer the call. Let's see. The most important way to make sure you're receiving this information is to make sure everything's updated in Skyward. Skyward is the system we use for pulling emails and phone numbers. And so if you have not been getting regular communication from the district, you would want to make sure that your information is up to date in Skyward. Now, our new families and our incoming kindergartners, they haven't been in the system just yet, and so they'll start receiving that information after the rollover happens, which is scheduled for this weekend. So again, just make sure you're checking your information is correct in Skyward. So then everything we send out, we also make sure is posted to the website. And that's so if you ever think you missed an email or you can't remember where you saw that information or what email it came in, you can go ahead and go to our district website. And we keep the homepage up to date. And then we've also had special sections on the website for, in the spring when we were dealing with all of the initial coronavirus information is all housed in one spot. And then now that we're focused on what the school year looks like in the fall, all that information is in one spot. And then finally, we have a really active and engaged community on our social media profiles. So if you don't yet follow us on Facebook or Twitter, I recommend that you connect with us there right away. We post critical information, and we also monitor it, all the time so that we can help answer questions and things like that. And then you can also follow the hashtag Life in the W. So that's all for my communication update. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. It may sound a bit cliche, but we are only as strong as our community and our parents, and we need to work through this together, and it's new to all of us. We've heard from our parents, and in response as a school district, as Dr. Thomas had mentioned, we're going to be creating instructional videos for parents and students so they feel comfortable and knowledgeable in order to support remote learning. They'll be on demand so parents can view them whenever it's convenient for them in their schedules. This was something we heard from families in the spring, that a work schedule or people have different work schedules. So this will allow parents to go and view them when it's convenient for them. We also, as Dr. Thomas said, will be making them in English and Spanish. Finally, we know that every family has different needs and different comfort levels when it comes to technology and remote learning. So we will have someone at each school that can assist families with technology and support them and help navigate any questions they may have. So earlier I talked about the fact that we're going to be having a phase-in start at the beginning of the year. And one thing we discussed as we switched to this model is the importance of a really strong start to the year for staff and students. We want to give our staff time to help prepare, receive some additional training, and we need to have time for parents to come and pick up books, workbooks, get a device, and get what they need. So we're going to be using August 26th to 28th to do these things, but to also have the first teacher-student connection. Teachers are going to be reaching out to families to set up a time to have a virtual meeting. The meeting is going to focus on building an initial connection, as well as reviewing what's happening with the upcoming school year and making sure that all students have the materials that they need to be successful. Our goal is that students have a chance to meet their teachers before they begin remote learning 2.0. So our next steps. Tomorrow morning, we will have communication going out to our staff and families. Our principals are also working on a survey to send to staff to see what they need to be successful during our remote learning time that's going to be coming out next week. We're creating a frequently asked questions document that we hope to answer some of the specific questions that families will have, and that will be continually updated. We are also asking our staff, our families, and our students for their questions, their concerns, or their support for this plan. We're excited to hear what our students have to say about the plan, and we invite them to complete the survey that's coming out tomorrow. We know we can learn from them on how to create the best learning program for them. Once we begin remote learning, we'll be conducting parent and student focus groups in order to strive for our goal, which is always continual improvement. In closing, this was not an easy decision, and I know some families and some staff may not agree with this decision, and I also know this means more work for all of us. But myself and my team believe this is the right decision. We examined several models over the last several months: full person, half day, rotating weeks, having a day off in the middle to clean. Due to our current concerns and our increasing COVID cases that we're hearing and the frequency in which cases are spread, we felt that the right decision at this time was for the health and safety of our students and our staff. We know some of our staff are anxious and we are concerned about their health. They're concerned about their health, and they're concerned about our students' health. We know families feel the same way. I've spoken to or heard from many of them. Also, we know that our staff and families need to plan, and that is why our recommendation is to move forward with this plan at this time. We will continue to work on these processes as we move forward, and I'm sure people have many questions and we will get answers for them. We also feel that the significant improvements in our fully remote plan will provide an excellent format for learning for our students when they start the school year. To not come back in person makes me sad. Our desire, and I know the desire of our staff, is to come back as soon as possible when it's safe, because we all want life in the W safely as much as we can. At this time, I'd be happy to take any questions from the board.
Board members, questions for Dr. Casey and team?
I do have a question. Actually, I'll start off by saying that I agree with the decision here, and I think I could speak for the whole board when I say that, you know, we want to start school, but we just don't feel like we're there yet. It is not quite, we're not quite ready for our students and our teachers and our staff to be 100% safe. That being said, we have any plans here to reevaluate this maybe in October, or depending on how things go? Hopefully they're going to go better in the country. I have some doubts, but I'm hoping that things go better, and we might be able to reevaluate this in a couple months.
We evaluate this consistently and constantly. We're looking at data from the Lake County Health Department, from the Illinois Department of Health. Every community is different, but we are looking at the percentages and the numbers of where we're at. So we are continuously looking at what is best. And there may be a point in time where we decide things are starting to look safe, and then we'll initially maybe bring back some groups slower, to go slow to go fast, basically, but we are continuously looking at that.
Thank you.
Other board members? Questions, comments? We'll have to set a time to vote on this, I think, next week, depending on the discussion today. But do you have any questions or things that you want to see in the action item next week that you feel weren't presented today? Just sort of throwing out some ideas for questions at this point.
I have a couple of questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think Joe and then Lizzie, is that correct? Was that you, Liz?
Okay.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh,
Okay.
Jennifer.
Yeah, I just wanted to, first of all, thank Dr. Casey and the community members who participated in the committees, as well as the teachers and the teachers union, and, you know, say that it's a difficult time. But especially hearing from the administration and the principals, hearing from all of you gives me a great deal of hope that, you know, we're on the right path. I support your plan, not only because of the health concerns, which I definitely have a lot of health concerns right now about how school reopening is going to work out, but also how we're using our time. You just laid out a really ambitious plan for remote learning, and it starts pretty quick coming up here. So I think it's going to be really important that we can use our time effectively. So, Dr. Little, I'm in favor of a vote as soon as possible to make sure that we start down this path. I do have a couple of questions. First, and just some logistical questions, but also about the students. But to begin with, can you talk about the safety precautions? I heard you say that teachers are going to be able to come into their classrooms to work during this time, but can you talk about the safety precautions in the school for students and teachers that might be in our schools during remote learning, and just to make sure that we're keeping people who are in the school safe?
Absolutely. First of all, we will not have any students. Students will not be coming to school. It will be just staff. If they, we're working with our union to see how that will work. But as adults, we'll be doing everything that we would normally be doing. We will have people. We'll be wearing masks in the hallways. We will have signage. Each school is working out all the safety precautions that we need to do if staff choose to come in. So we will continue with the hand washing. We'll tell people if they are sick, they are not to come into school. We have, safety things, the temperature checks and things that we'll be working with our employees to make sure that anybody that does enter one of our buildings has done those things on a daily basis. So we are working through some of those. Like I said, that is not finalized exactly what's going to happen. As you know, this was a turnaround that happened yesterday, but I know, we all feel so strongly about the safety of our staff, and I know our union and our staff agree with that too. So we'll definitely have safeguards in place for everyone.
Okay. I know that our teachers kind of come at remote learning from different perspectives and experiences. Can you talk a little bit about the steps that we can take to build collaboration and build their comfort level with remote learning? I mean, you mentioned it in your, Dr. Thomas mentioned it briefly in his presentation, but just making sure that we're doing the best possible job with remote learning that we can do.
Sure. So there's a few things that we're looking to do, and I'll certainly, if I forget something, Dr. Thomas can certainly add on. We've been providing what we've called Woodland Palooza all summer. So we heard in the spring that some of our staff said they didn't feel comfortable, and so we wanted to provide them some options for some learning in the summer. So Woodland Palooza happened thanks to Dr. Kiefer, and that was very successful for staff that were able to do that and chose to do that. We also know that in the beginning of the school year, we do have to provide people and allow our staff some more time to learn these things. So we are going to be providing some more professional development. We have professional development that we're looking at for what our parents need and our families and caregivers, and also what our staff need. And when you're talking about technology and you're talking about remote learning, it's not the same as taking what you do and now putting it on a computer. I've never taught remotely, and so our administrators had the same discussion. We're all going to be doing the same thing. We all said we needed training. So in order for us to help our staff, we need to do the same thing. But we're also sending out the survey that's going out tomorrow that asks staff, what do you need? One of the things that our principals are going to be working on next week is more information from our staff. What do they need? What do they need training in more specifically? Is it in Seesaw? Is it in, whatever they need? That once we get that information back from everybody, we'll look at the themes and we'll see how we can help people. But definitely we know that this is a huge learning curve to do it right for many people, and we will do our best to give people the support that they need.
Okay. Dr. Walls mentioned, it's Dr. Walls, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome, by the way, Dr. Walls. She mentioned that we would be working with Warren Township and continue to work with Warren Township to help students who are suffering from anxiety and depression during this time. I think that's going to be really important because it's pretty lonely. I mean, distance learning, you're missing out on the social emotional benefits of being in the classroom. So is there a way that we can you speak to that, or is there a way that we're building on that existing relationship and developing it even more? I know we have a really good relationship with Warren Township, but what are we doing to kind of build that up to be ready for kids who need it?
Sure. Well,
for a minute, Lene, and then it's okay. No, it's okay. Go ahead, Lene. Go ahead, Dr. Walls.
I was just going to say that thank you for the welcome. And we did have a member of the township participate on our social, emotional, and physical health committee. And so they've been walking with us step by step throughout this planning and the process and looking at the different models. My colleague, Dr. Vandenbroek, can certainly speak to the longitudinal history with the partnership. But since I've been involved, we have been working very closely with the township and, like I said, walking with them, alongside them every step of the way and planning for our students and our families.
And if I could, if it's okay, I'll jump in just a little bit. Joe, you know, Adam Krieger, we've had a partnership with Adam Krieger at Warren Township for years now. He was on our committee that we started back in May and participated in all of our committee meetings. He's been a partner with us for years and working with our psychs and social workers to talk about the themes and the concerns that we are seeing in school, and has been into all of our buildings. He knows all of our social workers. So he is on board with us to provide any type of services that he feels that we need, both to support students and families. So he takes his lead from the services they develop at Warren Township, from what our themes are that we're hearing in the building. So he is on board to do whatever we need.
Okay, I believe Jennifer had some questions.
Great, thanks.
Not really a question. Just wanted to say thanks for all of your hard work. I know that the plans constantly evolve and change, and just when you think you have something, they are something different. So thank you for all of your hard work on that. I do agree with David and think that this is the safest option for us, for our families, although we know learning in person for our kids is preferable. At this point, I think based on what we know and what's happening, that it is the safest option for our students and our staff. So just thank you for all of your work on this. I am excited about the opportunity for our students to do remote learning 2.0. I think of the team hit on a lot of the challenges that were in place in the spring, and some areas that needed improvement. And I think that those are, based on the plan they presented, being addressed with more live instruction, you know, attendance protocols and things like that, and really greater efforts to engage students as much as possible in that type of environment, as well as supporting students who don't have maybe the same level of support at home to do this, and taking all the steps necessary to help support what they need, you know, resource-wise, as well as, you know, social and emotional support. So I think it looks like a comprehensive plan, and I'm sure there's many details to be left to be figured out, but I appreciate all of your work.
Other board members, questions, comments?
I do have one quick question. I think it probably would be better for maybe Steve or Lori. So when we say synchronous, is that like how we are right now on this Zoom, but instead it would be Google Meet, and then like the class could see each other? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, that's correct. So it'd be live instruction, so interacting just like this. And I know, you know, one thing we're going to look at is what are those numbers? Because we certainly don't want kids sitting in front of a screen like this for 6 hours. Right. So we're trying to build some balance, but we definitely need to have more synchronous or live instruction like this.
Because I do think that would help our kids just on a daily. They still feel like they're part of a class. They still get to see, you know, some of their friends, maybe not get to chat as much, but I think that would be beneficial. And I'm thankful for all of the work that you guys and the logistics that you guys have been putting into this.
I would like to echo what everyone else has said. I know this is, you know, not the best plan for probably everyone in the district, but it does put the safety of our students, staff, and ultimately our community at large first. And I have every confidence that the leadership the administration, and that the whole Woodland community, including staff and parents, will make this successful.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I'd like that you guys have thought about the different components of the learning environment and what's important to move ahead in the new remote learning 2.0. I did have a couple of clarifying questions. One regarding the USDA rule you mentioned, Chris, about having to go back to the original rule for school lunch programs. Do you think that's going to stay in place, or do you think there will be some latitude, as most districts, it appears at this point, are going to continue with remote learning?
And I think that's just it. You know, I think everybody was expecting to see some sort of spike sometime in the fall, and the more districts that shut down, the more the USDA is going to realize that there's a need to go back to the waiver and to go ahead and start servicing the kids like they were being serviced in the spring and in the summer. So, you know, we're hopeful. We're very hopeful, and I wouldn't see why they wouldn't if all of a sudden we find ourselves in the same situation like we were in March and April and May. I can't give you a guarantee though.
Now, should we be reaching out to USDA or putting pressure on our elected officials to I guess, insist on those waivers? You know, what do we need to do as a board, as a school district with that?
That never hurts by any means. You know, and I can kind of start that effort and develop a plan so we can approach our legislatures and we can put something together to try to give the USDA a push in the right direction.
Did I hear, I'm sorry, Carla.
No, go ahead.
Because I was in the kitchen cooking at the time today, but didn't I hear the president during his briefing today, he mentioned something about schools and the money should follow the children instead of the district that the kid is in? And I stopped once I heard that. Chris, did you hear that while we're talking about the USDA?
I did not hear what President Trump said today.
Because that was of great concern to me.
Yeah, I'd have to look at his full
briefing.
He said in the full context instead of a snippet and figure out.
Okay.
When you say the money follows the child, that seems to be kind of a Trump DeVos. You know, that's something that I believe you'll hear out of them quite a bit.
Because he mentioned something about, as I said, I didn't get to watch it in depth, but he did mention something about parents having the choice to send their kids to whatever school they wanted to based on school closings, but any monies that would normally funnel through to the public school would go to the school that the child is actually attending, not the school district.
I don't think you could unilaterally make that decision.
I don't either, but I just wanted that because I know we were talking about the USDA and government. Yeah. That's something I wanted you to be aware of.
And all this talk about we get from our chief executive.
Someone speaking.
Oh, sorry. I'd say that if I could just talk for just a moment here, comment on one thing. All this talk about that we heard from our chief executive of the country here that they're going to cut school funding if we don't open schools. That's all pretty ridiculous. That has to make it through Congress, and that'll never happen. So that's just an empty threat. We made this decision, and we support Dr. Casey and her people based on the best scientific evidence and trying to take what is safest for the kids and the community and our teachers and our staff. We haven't been influenced in any way by any kind of interest whatsoever. We're just doing this totally by the science and trying to take care of the kids and ultimately our community. So I just want the people watching out there to know that. And we know that this is hard for some people, for working families who have to come up with childcare, and it's going to cause some problems. But ultimately, we have to take care of the kids that are entrusted to us and our staff. So this is the safest thing for us to do right now.
Okay, thanks, thanks, David. So then my other follow-up question I had about this, another one, I like the idea, Dr. Walls, of you mentioned in your presentation of not only having, I guess, social, emotional support for the students, but also for the staff and teachers. Can you expand on that a little bit more as well, please?
Yes. So we have created surveys, as you know, through the HR department that have gone out to staff about a number of things, including preferences and whatnot. And the SEL PH committee also did some informal polls on staff comfort level. We know that some of our staff members have lost family members and have been impacted in many ways, you know, financially, emotionally, personally, and that all matters when we are talking about their wellness in educating our students. And so we're keeping that at the front and at the center to make sure that our staff is as healthy as possible so that they can be present and available for our students.
So now have you guys decided on a plan of how that looks, or is, you know, do you do group support groups, or how is it that we can check in on staff and even students, you know, because I know being at home, remote learning, it can be somewhat isolating depending on, you know, your family structure and everything. But so have you guys thought about the plan, you know, the actual tactical part of that plan?
I can jump in on that, Dr. Little. What our SEL committee did, they created a student survey that can be done weekly, because we know some student difficulties come out in behavior, because behavior tells a story, right? Some are those internalizer. So they created a weekly survey that we can give to students. They also created a survey that can go out to staff. It's a confidential survey. Then our social workers and psychologists would have access to that. And if they need to meet privately or help talk with staff or coach staff or look for additional resources, that was the whole purpose in creating the survey to support staff as well.
Okay.
Can I add just one little point? So one of the big advantages as well of the 2 learning management systems that we have is that we can go in, school leaders can go in and observe classes as they're going on. So as long as there's live instruction going on, you know, a school assistant principal can go in and just stay in class for a little bit and really, again, get a better handle on what's going on in classes. Maybe there are kids that, you know, hey, we need to keep an eye on this kid. We've seen some, you know, behavior that's not been consistent with their past behavior, you know, maybe just not engagement, maybe just kind of, you know, withdrawing. That allows us some of the options. Social workers could do the same kind of thing. So much like when we had it before in the spring, we couldn't do those things as easily. Now we can do those things with those learning management systems to really pop in and engage more with kids.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for for Lori and team on this remote learning plan? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so I think that the 2 biggest things that we need, going back to a conversation before about what we can do, you know, moving forward to have a healthy reopening of the schools. In terms of working with the Department of Education and the state legislature and ISB, I'm interested in hearing how we as a district, Dr. Casey, can help provide insight so that we can get the clear and reasonable guidance that we need, and also the financial support. And if we're going to bring students back to school, especially in a time of COVID, pre-vaccine, even if the numbers drop dramatically, in order to prevent, you know, a spread and prevent an outbreak in our schools, we're going to need financial support. We're going to need the federal government to step in, and Congress to step in and make some things possible for us. So what are some of the ways that we can help, you know, the state legislature help ISB and communicate what those needs are?
Sure. Great question. Well, a few ways that I can think of off the top of my head. One is I know that our board is very much involved with the Illinois Association of School Boards. And I know that they're advocating on behalf of school districts on what's best for schools in Illinois. So I would recommend as a board that we watch that guidance. Dr. Little and I were actually on a call with them yesterday for something, but watch that guidance and see how they say we could help as far as legislative measures. The other thing is I'm part of like the Lake County Superintendents, which is a very active group, and we have representatives that are working on the state guidance. And so we meet at least once or twice a week. And we talk about how we can do these things and where we need to push some of this action. But also like Dr. Thomas, for example, is in certain, his professional organizations. So I think a lot of times it's really paying attention to what our professional organizations are doing and seeing how that impacts us at Woodland in our district, and then seeing how we could utilize our professional organizations to help us in these matters. It will be, I think, continue to be very fluid. As things change, and we all have to be current on that, and we all have to be ready to, if we feel that's something that we need to work with our legislators, write our legislators, make them aware of something that's impacting us at Woodland, then we certainly need to do that.
Okay.
One more question.
Go ahead, Jennifer, sorry.
I just had a question about, will there be any change in offerings to students in terms of, I'm going to call them extracurriculars, but sometimes they do fit into the school day and are not actually extracurricular, or they're kind of like walk that borderline, like things like band and choir opportunity. Like, what is that going to look like if there are things that are not going to be able to be offered based on the nature of
Sure.
The activity, or what will those things look like?
Sure. So I'm also going to have Dr. Thomas if I forget anything on this, but there's a few things. We know that our teachers are experts in some of these areas. So our band teachers are amazing, and they have been so current on what's going on, following the guidance, figuring out the most that they could do for their students, and they've been working with the principals. I'm just using them as an example. There's some that we're having very strict, in order to keep the health and safety of our students, that are not going to be possible. So for example, at the middle school, we're not going to be having fall sports this fall. But we're working with our teachers who are also working with their professional organizations, and we're determining what we can do or can't do. But I can say that when our team talked about this, and we're continuing to see what evolves, because I know IHSA is still working on their guidelines and things like that. But when our team talked about it, we said, let's start safe, let's start slow, and then see how we can expand that. But we also believe fully in the importance of our art and our music programs and all of those things for students. So we never ever want to lose sight of that either. But Dr. Thomas, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add.
No, I think you covered it pretty well. But yeah, the term we use is co-curricular. Yes, extracurricular and co-curricular. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, in some ways, looking at what could have been a blended model, we would have had some very large restructuring and limitations to some of those co-curricular options, just giving safety concerns. And maybe while this will be more virtual in some cases, it will be safer, certainly, given that there's a lot of guidance involving band and choir that have to be really looked at. So, but virtually, it should be much safer.
I have a question to either Dr. Casey or Dr. Thomas. Will there be some type of monitoring or oversight of the teachers to ensure that each classroom, each grade level is getting an equitable experience with this remote learning 2.0?
Sure, I'll let Dr. Thomas talk about that, because he and I have talked about it in depth.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that we heard feedback from parents, as well as even teachers themselves, about the inconsistencies of experiences that our students had. So again, those two basic foundations that we have that really they provide the structure for all of our instruction are those pieces of Seesaw and Schoology. Those two allow us a lot more flexibility. They allow us interaction between other teachers going into class environments. They allow us a more seamless integration of Google Meets, as well as interactions there. we're still going to use some of the pieces that many of our families are probably been pretty used to, which is the school classroom or Google Classroom as an example. We'll still use that, but our primary communication and documenting tool or communication and assignment learning tool is going to be those two learning management systems. I mentioned just briefly that by having pieces like that, our school support staff, our school administrative staff can jump in and just hop into video presentations and live instruction, much like this is, much like the presenters and us. We just joined your meeting at just towards the middle of the meeting. You get to see and interact at that level. But again, that does not only to help kind of ensure what's going on instructionally within the school environment or the virtual school environment, but also goes back to how do we keep an eye on, again, some of the kids that maybe we're concerned about that are withdrawing or really being impacted social emotionally by this, by the pandemic that's really hitting our community. So there's a lot of great advantages to having that foundation, that solid foundation of those two learning management systems.
Yeah, I really like that question of equity in the classroom, but also equity individually with students. And I know from the proposal that you've presented tonight that you've talked about the tools and the support that you're, we're planning to promote equity among individual students. But what about, that piece where the parents may not still feel, what will we do in those cases where maybe the parents still feel that they're, for whatever reason, if we've taken care of the internet piece, we've taken care of the tools piece so that children can participate remotely, but what about the parents who still don't bring their kids to school? And what is our mechanism then to ensure that we're meeting the needs of those students?
Absolutely, and I think that first goes back to that piece, and Dr. Hawk talked about it, was that attendance piece, which is something we moved away from. We need to have that quick data piece of, are kids engaged in school? Are they ready? Are they here for school? If not, we need to respond right away that day. We need to start getting, interacting with the family. Yeah, what's going on? We noticed that, you didn't call in, but blah, blah, blah was not in class today. We need to start that conversation right away. Dr. Casey talked about, we have a list of students already that had a hard time engaging with us in the spring. Let's use that as a springboard. Let's see what we can do to contact them before we start the school year. Hey, let's first make sure, do you have the structural pieces ready to go? Do you have a kind of a quiet place you might be able to go to study with? Do you have, sufficient Wi-Fi access? Do you have, is the Chromebook or the iPad working well for you? Let's start with those basic things. And then what are some things we can do to help you? One thing I think we went through a lot with our training with Midwest and Equity, Equity Assistance Center, is about what in our system can we do to make sure our kids are successful. Stop looking at so much for what the kid wasn't able to provide this or the family wasn't, but what in our system can we do to make sure that they are able to equally access that instruction? So that's a big shift, and that's one I know a lot of our admin team we've been talking about. We need to do something system-wise to make sure those kids can engage.
Then what about the whole idea of that average daily attendance and how school funding is dependent on that? Does that factor into remote learning at all from a State Board of Ed perspective?
We certainly would have to track attendance. And one of the things that, in the past, in the spring, one of the things that mentioned by Dr. Casey was those catch-up days. And those before were allowed to count as full attendance days. That's no longer the case. Now it's five hours of instruction as the minimum. And, we're doing a regular, day and basically keeping the same hours. And so, yes, attendance will definitely take that attendance and reporting it just like we would normally report it.
So we have to make sure we're communicating that to parents, that attendance is very important, that this does count towards school funding and things like that.
Absolutely. I would agree with you completely.
Communications and plan in place. Do we have any other questions about the plan? Or if not, we'll transition to talk about the action item that the board will vote on.
Just one final thing, Dr. Little, I just want to add, Dr. Maychek touched on it, but I know that there are families out there that this is going to be difficult for. And one thing he's working with, and he mentioned it, but I think it's important for people that are listening. We are going to be trying to set up with our local childcare providers, and people may want to sponsor a child. So if there's an organization listening, or if there's a business listening, or if there's a person listening that says, I understand that. I understand we don't want a mother or a father to feel like I either have to choose to go to work or leave my child home alone. And how can we assist? This is a community issue. And how can we as a community come together to help some of those children and help some of those families? So we're going to be sending out more information about that later. But for now, I want to make sure that people are aware of that, because I know for some families that's going to be difficult.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up again. Anyone else? Okay, so I believe we have this scheduled for next Thursday for a board vote. Is that correct? And so when we vote, the action item, we're basically voting on the idea of remote learning through at least to the end of the first quarter, correct? Do we need to include anything else, or will we come back at a later date, say we figure out that the end of the first quarter will not be the best time to come back to school in person? Would we then have to come back and do another vote, or do we put something? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so do we talk about triggers at all, about what it looks like to come back in person, or do we just want to save that for another?
If anybody has the answer to that, that would be wonderful. That's something that as a state, everybody's looking at. It's something as, an organization we're looking at, but we're waiting to see if nobody has been able to say, this is the reason, this is the number that we're looking for you to come back safely. We have had others that have said, here's why you shouldn't be coming back safely. So at this time, I don't have the trigger numbers. I don't have, if this happens, we will be coming back safely. I can just tell you that my team and I will be watching all of that and putting together our reasoning and our lists of why we feel it's important to recommend to you that we would return back in person. And again, we may return back in a hybrid model. We may return back, in different ways. It may not be returning back to full remote. If we could do that, that would be great. But we would be proposing different models to you when that time comes.
Okay.
I understand that there's not a criteria right now for when we return, but I do think, and you don't have to answer this now, but something to think about before we vote is giving enough lead time to families and teachers, and so that if we get within a certain time frame of the end of the first quarter, that we're not kind of springing it on people.
Yeah, absolutely. Our team talked about that families need lead time for a number of reasons. We need lead time for a number of reasons. We are using 3 of our remote learning planning days up front because we felt it was so important to start strong. So we do have 2 days left that we may be using at a later date when we know that we're transitioning back in some way. But yes, we will definitely give people as much notice as we possibly can.
Okay, well, thank you very much. If there's no other questions, we'll look forward to this being an action item next Thursday. Okay, let's move forward with the board agenda, please. Next up, we have board improvement and operations. There's a discussion, we should have a discussion, I should say, on the starting right meeting with IASB field representative. Right now, our meeting is scheduled for, I believe it's August 22nd. I'm sorry, Lori.
I just said that's correct.
Yeah, so is that okay with everybody to keep that date for a meeting with IASB? We should have a new board member seated by then, so it's probably a good time to have that. For all the other reasons, we had already scheduled it, as we have a new superintendent, and we wanted to make sure we all got on the right step with our new superintendent. Now we'll have a new superintendent and a new board member as well. So, anytime you have a new member to your team, it's basically a new board team. So any objections to August 22nd?
My only concern about the August 22nd date is we're cutting it very close because we're going to be starting school in a couple days. And I imagine that with everything that's going on, our superintendent is going to have a lot on her plate. So, I mean, I'm fine with it, but I do want us to consider.
I appreciate that, but I believe it's August 22nd. Is that a Saturday? I have to look at my calendar.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Absolutely. I really appreciate that. But no, we can, I think this is really important. You know, and it's important for me to gain direction from all of you. So it's really good timing. You know, I'll rest another day.
Lori, don't. There's no fainting because you're doing a lot. So if you faint,
that's
throw some water on you and you get back up.
I'm good with the 22nd.
I'm good with it.
Do we have a time for that meeting yet?
Yes.
Yeah, it's more. It was what, 9?
If it was in the morning, it's 8. Laura would know.
The meeting is scheduled, I believe, from 8 until noon, but I can confirm and get back to you on that.
Okay, I thought it was 8.
Yes.
And at this point, we will assume that it's going to be virtual, so not in person, correct? Or is that not a good assumption on my part?
It's whatever you tell me you want it to be.
Okay, we'll look at the case numbers and see where they're going in the county, but I would, yeah. So we'll get back.
I think for now we should plan for virtual.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Okay, so we have that one. The next is discussion of board vacancy. We have lots of candidates, 9, that have applied for the board vacancy. I don't think it's practical to try to do an interview that similar to what we did previously when we brought David onto the board. Because we don't have that benefit of the in-person interview process. And I think it would be very cumbersome and not very productive to try to interview 9 potential board members via Zoom. So my recommendation for that would be to work to whittle down that number and then maybe interview 2 or 3. Ask them to, you know, whatever the top 2 or 3 are, ask them to submit, in addition to the questionnaires that they've done, but also submit some letters of recommendation, and then we can kind of go from there and maybe interview the top 2 or 3. Just because I don't think it's very practical to try to do the same process that we've done previously. What's our timeline on seating a new board member?
Laura, what's our timeline?
So originally you had scheduled the interviews to be Monday night and then the seating on Thursday night.
What's our actual timeline that we have to seat them?
Oh, I'm sorry. You had 60 days from the date of when the former board member turned in her letter, and I'd have to double check, but I believe she turned in her letter less than a month ago.
Oh, okay. So we have some time on that. Let's work out a new process. I'll work with Joe and Lori on that and get back to you guys on Thursday on a new process, because I don't think it's going to be practical to interview 9 people via Zoom at all. So it's a big decision. I think we should slow it down and do it right. That's my recommendation. Any objections to that?
I totally agree with you. I just want to add that the candidates have already submitted a cover letter, a resume. They've been asked an extensive number of questions and have already provided us a lot of information. So I think we're in a good place to whittle down that number to 2 or 3.
Yeah. I would actually like to, like I said, get some recommendations too, since we're not going to be able to interview people in person. I think that would be a helpful data set.
The only other thing, Dr. Little, is that at some point we'll need the date for the new board member training, which will, how we've done the training in the past with a couple of board members and myself. So we'll need that date also, once the person is seated.
Okay, let's put that on the agenda for next Thursday to get some dates on the calendar for that and come up with a process by then. Revised process for board vacancy selection.
So I just looked, and the final day to appoint the board member is August 21st, which is actually prior to the next board meeting. So you could have, originally in the draft that we had sent to you, we could go ahead and hold a special meeting the week of August 3rd through the 13th, anytime in that time frame if you wanted. If you'd like, I can go ahead and send all of you the draft timeline that we had originally given you at the June meeting. If you'd like for me to do that, I'll be more than happy to do that, and then we can come up with some new dates.
Yeah, that would be great. You can include it in the board packet for next Thursday?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments on that before we move to the next item?
What's this, the new board training? Because I've been on the board now for, well, it's been 14 months now, and I don't think I ever went through that. New board training?
Normally what we do is we have a presentation, and it would be Dr. Little and myself and any other board members that would like to join, and we go through the responsibilities of what a board member is. And then we also offer for you to meet with the different members, the administrative members, so they can explain what they do. I believe you've done that, right? That piece of it. Okay. Yes. So that's what we're talking about. It's more of it's a comprehensive, here's what your responsibilities are, here's what they're not. And then also you meet with the different people so you know what they do. So you'd meet with Mr. Boback, he would explain what he does, etc. So that's what it is.
Well, I did all that. I didn't realize that was the new board training. Okay, good.
Okay. Anything else on the board vacancy before we move forward?
So just so I have direction, Dr. Little, just so I have direction. So next week on Thursday for the board meeting, there's two items. One is the vote on remote learning, and the other, for now, unless something, we may have something else, is the revised board member timeline.
Yes, please.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understand.
Next up, discussion of board members on committees. I think there's not a lot of discussion. I'm not sure how many committees will be meeting, but I think we need to try to keep things going. So I think we'll have to decide on that too after we seat a new board member, because we're going to have to add that board member to committees. So we may want to hold off on that too until that might be a really good discussion after that board member is seated. Board committee.
We can certainly move it to perhaps to the August meeting, because that's when the new board member will be seated by.
Yeah, August and September, probably.
Yeah, would you?
Because it's usually the first time we talk about it, people seem to not get it until the second time we talk about it. Has been my experience talking about board committees.
So we'll put it on the August, and then we can see, and then it may end up in the September one also.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. For people to make a decision. Any other questions? Any other comments, discussions about board committees? Okay. Status of request from board members, recap future board items, correspondence. We did have several correspondence for the month of July. All except one were the return to school plan, and probably addressed a lot of that for those people tonight. And then only one from Anthony Knight required a response. And that was, I don't know if you all remember, he had given some suggestions about better ways to incorporate African American or Black history into the curriculum, and his concerns with how we have been doing it in the past. He has sent several suggestions. I have forwarded to the board. I think it's been a couple of months ago now. Any questions?
You'll see in the response, Dr. Thomas and I had the opportunity, and we met with Mr. Knight. We had a great meeting, great conversation, and I'm hoping he'll continue the dialogue with us because he's got some really good ideas. So we felt the best way to try and continue that was to meet with him, and so we did, and it was a really good meeting.
Great. Any other questions about that? Comments? Okay. Freedom of Information Act request. There was one FOIA request for the month of July. Chris, did you want to discuss that?
Sure. One FOIA request from Gail Newton of Petroleum Traders Company or Corporation, just requesting 2 invoices per month from your current gasoline and diesel fuel contract, requesting that those invoices be within the last 12 months. That happened on 6/2, response date was 7/2, and it has been fulfilled.
Thank you. Questions, comments for Chris? Okay, hearing nothing, let's move forward. Announcements and board committee reports. Anything board members you want to share on your individual committees that you all participate in? Do we know, I know we know a little about what's happening with the high schools. Do we know what's happening with CEDAL in terms of schooling for the fall, Jennifer? Have you heard anything?
I have not heard the update. There was an executive board meeting. I'm not part of the executive board, so there hasn't been a general board meeting. But their executive board meeting was, I think that a lot of their schools are housed within, or a lot of their programs are housed within schools. So they are working with those school districts to follow the plans of those school districts. So I think that as the landscape's changing quickly in Lake County, I'm sure that their plans are adjusting accordingly. So I think that I don't know exactly, maybe Lori or Donna, you have more information, but I haven't seen any updates from the executive board meeting.
You're absolutely right, Dr. Hawk. It is the CEDAL superintendents on our weekly meetings, and they are going with what, my understanding is they're going with what the districts are doing. So they're in the same, fluid situation all over the county. But they're sending information out to their member districts and also to their families about what their plans are.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
I'm just cautious to speak of it publicly as of now, because as we know, plans could change tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Any other committees or anything to share? Okay. Citizen statements. Laura, do we have any?
No, there's none.
Okay. Well, then can I get a motion to return to closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Return to closed. So I'm sorry, who made the motions? I didn't realize you were going back into closed.
Yeah, I made the motion.
I'm sorry?
Joe made the motion.
Okay. And who seconded?
Jennifer.
Thank you. And so roll call, we'll go with Joe.
Yes.
Lizzie?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
David? Carla?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, so we'll go back to the closed link, correct?
Correct.